What's up, humans? You're listening to the What is Humans podcast with Shane Strunk and Dennis Kluba. Make sure to follow us on our social media pages on Instagram at What is Humans Podcast, on TikTok at What is Humans Podcast, and on YouTube at What is Humans. Today, Dennis and I are discussing life investments. Enjoy.
Listen to the What is Humans podcast with Shane Strunk and Dennis Kluba. If you're new to the show or this is your first time listening, we are a personal growth podcast that focuses on physical, spiritual, mental growth and health. And these are conversations that we have.
Yeah.
And the idea is that they help ourselves, but hopefully you listening at home, it's going to help you as well. And most importantly, we're experts in almost nothing.
Good to see you, man.
Good to see you too.
What are we talking about today?
Life investments.
Okay. What does that mean?
So when there's a 401k, this is a financial podcast now. No, the idea that we really centered around here was kind of taking a turning point when 2023 started.
Okay.
On recognizing that we have a finite amount of time in our days, weeks, especially with work involved, and then, when it comes to social, career, and then physically, we just had a lot of things that we wanted to invest in.
Yeah.
And we kind of, for the first time, sat down and looked at what are the things that we maybe needed to say no to that weren't going to serve us long term.
Yep.
And say more yes to on things that we thought were.
Yeah. I think we realized what our most valuable asset was, which is our time. Mm-hmm. And there, life has been, there's so many things I can be grateful for, and I'm very happy to have, to be able to live the life I live.
Yeah.
But I am ambitious still, and I want to pursue, this could be very similar to your pursuit, but I want to do well in all aspects of my life.
Yeah.
So I think this conversation will be questioning where we say yes to and where we say no to, and then specifically where we can think about investing more intentionally our time or our resources or our effort to get the results that we want out of this life.
Yeah, no, I think that's definitely where the conversation is going to, be driven. And I think that one of the toughest things, and maybe the place that we start, is recognizing in your own life the times where you maybe have not been investing or investing poorly.
Yeah.
I can speak for myself.
Yeah, let's talk about the poorly aspects. I feel like it's more relevant.
Yeah, I think that a lot of times a big thing for me in my past, and this is from soccer, it's from career-wise, it's from passions that I've had. I think I have this idea where actions and results weren't really there. Like I had things that I wanted to do, and I had goals, and I definitely put short-term benefits for me in soccer, especially my last 2 years when I was in Dayton.
You mean like short-term gratification results?
Short-term, yeah. Okay. Short-term gratification over long-term success.
Effort and action.
Yeah, okay. So for me at Dayton, that was partying and social life, and I wasn't ready to give up those short-term, like you said, those immediate gratification in order to kind of do what was necessary, I think, to be really the best athlete that I could be.
Yeah.
And at that time, I look back and I have a little bit of, resentment, or that kind of frustrates me. And then fast forward, I've had that many times since where I have ideas of how good I thought I could be, whether that was in career-wise or with the podcast or physically, and just was kind of sick of, I could do that if I really dedicated myself. But then I wasn't choosing. That's not what a person who's invested would do.
Yeah.
I would choose the opposite.
Yeah.
Go out 2-3 nights in a row, spend a bunch of money for what?
Yeah.
To feel terrible for 2 days and then.
Yeah. It's kind of a really cool insight, and it's similar to how I've felt, people feel. I feel like in general is I specifically see the importance of where I spend my time and the effort, and how easy it is to, I guess, like lie to myself on the results, or it's like make up excuses as to why I'm not somewhere. When I'm not kind of fully looking at, okay, how am I actually living? Am I actually giving my best and doing my all for this discipline? For this career, for the podcast, for your training, for your nutrition, whatever discipline you're trying to learn or grow towards. You have to be so brutally honest with yourself on where you are, and it's so easy to be delusional. Especially like as I partied a lot, and it's just so easy to find excuses and put all these like external reasoning as to why I'm not somewhere. And we've talked about in many episodes like the idea of extreme ownership and how we have to be responsible for the things we control. And I think that's probably very, very relevant to this when it comes to investments for ourselves.
Yeah. What do you think? One more thing I was thinking of before I kind of get into this question, but it is like, as corny as it is in life investments, I really do think of it in like financial terms of like, after you go out, I think one of the most relatable things is not wanting to check your bank account. Just kind of hoping that you have enough money in there to get you to the next paycheck. And I think that a lot of times that's how I felt and was kind of going through life of, you're hoping because you don't want to come to terms and have that honest reality check of, holy shit, you are very close on the line of like, not good. My biggest question, I think, was, what do you think was the turning point for you now versus Shane of old?
Yeah, you mentioned like how you kind of resented some of your past, or it's like your college days, like you partied, like we were friends and did similar things. And I think that resentment is probably the wrong word. It's when I look at your question of like, what was the turning point? I think I needed kind of that struggle, or that like those past experiences for that kind of kick in the ass of, oh, okay, this is what it means. Like, this is where I'm being dishonest with myself. Like, this is where I'm not giving my best. Like, this is where I could be doing better. And, I think it's just understanding that lesson is kind of the difference now. It's like you have to kind of practice that self-awareness, or like really dive deep within yourself of like, okay, am I being true to like my effort, or am I expecting results or giving excuses as to why I'm not there? So I think it was kind of that awakening, within, but I feel like I needed that journey of struggle before then.
Yeah, I think too it's a little bit of I think like you mentioned, the struggle, or I was going to say the equal and opposite reaction of, you have to have that experience of whatever it is for you. Partying, living life on the edge, whatever that vice is for you that's maybe preventing you from reaching whatever goals, or is a short-term high.
And I don't see it like as it has to be a high, like like partying, or it could be just like you going down the wrong path and realizing you're going the wrong way. Like, it could just be, oh, this isn't the right subject for me. Like, this is the wrong major. It's okay to change. Like, this is the wrong relationship. It's like you have to be on the path to discover if you're not on the right path. Like, you can't be you can't like not begin it to know that it's not for you. So it's like that's part of that learning journey, is you have to be doing it in it to know if it's not right for you.
I think my biggest question with that is choosing it over and over again.
You mean like the insanity? Like, what's the definition of insanity?
Doing the same thing and expecting something different.
Yeah.
And I think that so often is the plight of, like you mentioned, relationships or the major or the job.
Yeah.
Or, like you said, partying and then expecting to run your best mile.
Yeah.
Or whatever the next day. It's like, it's just never going to happen.
Yeah.
So, what's the reasoning behind, continuing to make those choices over and over again? For me, it's, I think it was like denial.
Yeah.
Denial and the inability to make hard decisions and let something go, knowing that it wasn't serving me.
Yeah.
And I wasn't helping that person or that job or whatever
Yeah.
either, because I wasn't loving it or didn't do it to the best of my ability either.
Yeah. I feel like that running example was so directed at me, at my habits. It's something that I'm looking to improve, but it's like so very true. It's like, if I'm so passionate about something, if it's something that I love, if it's something that I want to continue to do in the future, I should be able to make sacrifices in terms of my health, in terms of my, limiting some of my drinking habits in order to serve that goal or that pursuit of what I love. So it's like, I think that understanding, it's like, I can't live in denial. Or it's like I have to be aware of kind of my blind spots in order to kind of find that success in the thing I love.
I think you're right. It's knowing the blind spots, right?
Yeah.
It's knowing where
How do
they're
we
at.
do that though?
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing that it was kind of good for me, and I don't really know how this happened or what it was, but it was a simultaneous thing of, and I think that happens for people at different points in their life. It's not necessarily a maturity thing. You could be 18, 21, 35, whatever.
Yeah, totally.
Is I no longer found fulfillment or fun in some of the things that previously I'd had fun doing. And for example, earlier this year, even back into last year, the idea of staying out until 4 a.m., 3 a.m., etc. You're with the boys, or, you have your group of friends. You're hammered, and you're going to the next bar.
Yeah.
Because you're like, well, maybe something great could happen. Find the love of your life. Somebody does something insane. I don't know.
Yeah.
Something that you could laugh about forever. That never felt like now, maybe when I was 22 or even 21, it's like that could happen.
Yeah.
Maybe. But then by now it's like, it's just not, it's almost like the easy ability to walk away that I didn't have when I was 21 to 25.
Well, I think of this too, like in like forcing fun versus kind of like allowing and kind of creating it like yourself. Like I think the need to like, okay, I have this buzz or I have this like energy about me, if that's in drinking or it's like, in a friend group setting, it's like, okay, I need to have another, or we need to go to the next bar, we need to do this. Like I think that idea of forcing it and like kind of never ends up working when if we just like are constantly with our friends all the time. We almost need a little bit of abstinence from them or from drinking or like limit it so it's like special occasions instead of it being kind of like forcing fun only on the weekends or forcing more drinks to be had so you can reach that more fun time. So what do you think about that?
Yeah, I completely agree. And I don't want to limit this to just drinking or drugs or anything like that. I think it's applicable to everything, right? It's if you're in a relationship that feels like it's not necessarily the person for you long term,
Sure.
It's the same way of forcing, and this is funny because forcing, especially in relationships, I feel like doesn't feel like it to the person who's trying to force it. You got to be forcing it to make this relationship great. Or number two, you're clinging on to somebody, like you said, and not able to be your own person. And then it's like smothering the other person. Yeah. And that's like an opposite form of forcing it in that you're clinging on.
All of this is kind of neglecting the understanding of your own needs in every facet of life. If it's the career-wise, if it's the relationship, or it's with vices, it's like you have to be control,
Yeah.
or you have to have a strong understanding of what your needs are. If you can start with understanding yours and meeting those,
Yeah.
you can serve the other people, the other external things in your life tremendously better.
Yeah. And I think that the people that are most successful at this, and what I think we're both trying to be, is like you mentioned, understanding yourself and your needs. I think it's understanding, like, as well, what fulfills you. And the person that's content by themselves is always the one that's like the winner, right? If it's a person that they don't need to go to the next bar,
Yep.
or they like don't need to see their significant other every day of the week. They have hobbies, they have other things they're doing, whether that's alone or in a group. Those people are content in that, not that they wouldn't care if they don't see their friends, they don't see their significant other. It's that they cherish that time so much, they want it to be special, and they want the other person to help them grow, as opposed to needing something or someone for that fulfillment that they don't have in their life.
Yeah. And that's kind of like where we need to focus, is, I would argue, is just the investments in understanding ourselves and meeting our own needs in order to show up fully in our lives, in a relationship, career, whatever setting.
Yeah. So how does it look to begin? Like we said, I don't really know when the turning point is, but how do you begin to think in more long-term, eyes of life investments, as opposed to maybe the short-term gratification that is so easy for all of us to, slip into?
Yeah, totally. It's very hard to, I guess, get that 10,000 feet view kind of while you're in the trenches of life, or while you're kind of going throughout your days.
Yeah.
I think a really, really good practice is to kind of, we always do this like reevaluation or reflection question of asking yourself kind of where you want to go.
Yeah.
And if you have a strong why, or understanding where you want to go, you need to be asking yourself, like, am I putting time and effort in relationships, towards that why, or towards that life I want to live?
Yeah.
And if you're not, if there are things that are misaligned that you are doing in your daily, in your weekly, in your monthly, maybe you need to remove, certain settings and things you're doing in your life, habits.
No, I think that you're right. It's, having that why in mind, or at least, why you're here now and where you want to go, that begins to fuel the decision that you make on a micro basis to get to that macro kind of goal. I think one of the other things with that, or maybe a step two, and this is just from me, kind of speaking from my own experiences, I just noticed a lot in myself over years being frustrated. We talk about this a lot on this podcast, but like flow state.
Yeah.
And I think that when you have those realization points on the Mondays or the Sundays, if you're hungover, or if in a relationship, like you said, you're forcing it, that you're frustrated, there's moments where, you do need to push through those situations, but there's other times where you need to step back and reevaluate, okay, why am I constantly at odds in life? Is it because of the habits that I'm doing on a daily basis? Or is it that, I'm going down the wrong major path, or my career, this just isn't it for me, right? And I think that comes too with the reflection on almost finding those pain points that you're grateful for because you've gone through them. It tells you what you don't love, but then identifying them to say, okay, if I don't love going to the same bar in my hometown every weekend, okay, I need to find something different.
Totally.
Or if I don't love waking up and having living paycheck to paycheck, I need to start saving and budgeting better.
Yeah.
So it's like those pain points that you need to find within yourself.
Yeah.
And then be honest about.
Yes, that was the thing I wanted to ask you. It's like, I think your second how you're describing is like, how do we be extremely like honest with exactly where we are today?
Yeah.
Of like being able to identify those pain points and where you are.
Yeah.
It's like, it's really tough to confront. It's like, look at that spending habit, or look at that vice, or look at my phone habits, or look at how I behaved, or it's like, look how lazy. So it's like I think it's like you have to understand that you can't be perfect.
Yeah.
Like you can't go throughout life, unscathed. I think it's like be comfortable being brutally honest with yourself. You will then be able to create that muscle of like taking, ownership over your life and your decisions and owning that. That way you can start tackling these different pain points.
When you said that, confronting, being brutally honest, it reminds me a lot of like if you've ever watched Bar Rescue or something like that, like Restaurant Impossible, where it's like, we're gonna crack open the books, and almost every time the owner like is like, oh my gosh, like I'm losing money, or like I'm drinking from my own supply,
Giving
or
all
like,
your friends free drinks.
That's the equivalent of step 2 is just John Taffer yourself, Bart Rescue yourself.
John Taffer yourself.
And just get in there and say, okay, what's actually happening on the books?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that. So do we want that to be our second how? Or
I think that's the second how. Being brutally honest.
Okay.
John Taffer yourself.
Okay. How about a third how? What are we thinking about like when it comes to life investments? If we're going to be kind of starting with why, kind of get that vision and purpose and direction. And then the second step being the John Teffer Bar Rescue, being very brutally honest with where you are. Yeah. What would be a good third step for us?
We talked a little bit about this before, but it's kind of the investing in investing.
Interesting.
So if you have this long-term why, which is step 1,
okay,
and then 2, you're like, okay, let's be honest about what my actions are currently.
Yeah.
Investing in investing is kind of like, we literally used this example earlier. If you're single and you're trying to find your life partner, think about where you'd want that person to be.
Yeah.
Is that person on the dance floor at 2 a.m. in a dark club? I don't know. Probably not. Maybe if that's for you.
Yeah.
Are they, at a workout class? Are they at a bookstore? Are they at a coffee shop? Maybe more likely.
Yeah.
But the thing is, you have to put yourself in the environments and the, places and times where you want your investments to grow.
Yeah. You get out what you put into this world. So when it comes to your work, your effort, the type of person you want to attract, it's like you have to be the person you want to be with.
Yeah.
You have to do the job of the job you want to have.
Yeah.
If you want to, so it's doing the talk. I don't know how we can
walking the walk.
Yeah, and walking the walk.
I think the biggest thing, which is such an easy one as well, or easy to do for normal people, and I'm not, outside of this at all, was I would always look at Instagram or social media and see people that I'm like, oh man, whether it's a personal trainer or a professional athlete, and be like, wow, these people are shredded or whatever. And then it's like, well, their daily routine is XXX, right? They're doing these kind of things. This is what their diet is. And in your own mind, thinking that you could look like that or you could make the amount of money that somebody else does, well, the reason they do that is because this is their routine. So the same way as you have to have grace with yourself, but also be honest and say, okay, if I want that to be where I want to go, I have to do the things that person would do.
Yes, and stop putting it on a pedestal tool of like making the goal or dream or the person like so out of reach. It's like hard for you to frame in your mind of like that you are capable of many, many things. So it's like you have to like reframe in your mind that's like, okay, literally we'll just take effort and time.
Yeah.
Not all things are possible, but it's like how do we set ourselves up for success and not be so self-deprecating so we never begin.
Yes, completely. So why are we talking about this today?
Man, I think
a million things.
I think like kind of the 2-year podcast, like we're coming up next couple weeks or whatever.
Because this is, I think 103 comes out this week.
Okay.
This might be the 2-year show.
Is it really?
I think it technically is, yeah.
Okay. I think that was kind of we're 2 years. We were kind of reevaluating kind of where we are and like how do we get this out to the right people that, we want to impact. And I think that this question of like where we're investing for our life, in all areas of personal, professional, social, etc. It's like how do we live the goals that we have? How do we pursue those? And I think that this question on where we spend our time and effort is super important in achieving that.
Yeah, no, I think that you're right. I think that it almost came for me, this topic, out of, you mentioned, past experience enlightening what I don't want, how I don't want to feel.
Yeah.
And I was feeling a lot of this almost claustrophobia coming out of 2022 of just like things were kind of caving in. Like bad decisions were caving in on me, whether that was going out too much, didn't feel great physically, or then that in turn was affecting like Monday and Tuesday. I was like, I don't feel great. And then I was pissed off at my job, whatever, right? Because I just didn't love that, but that week was all affected by the weekend.
Right.
But then on Thursday, you're like, well, I'm just trying to get to the weekend now.
Right.
It was a weird cycle. And then, because of that, your finances are all out of whack. And I think it almost pushed me in this direction of, I want to feel way better, and I want to invest in myself and the things that give me life, give me joy. And saying no to some of those short-term, immediate gratification things has led me to a place where I can feel more grateful, even it's still super challenging, like the podcast, like work, like physical demands, but I'm happy that I'm investing those things that are hard and giving me life.
Yeah. I love that, man.
Yeah.
Let's do a quick recap. So today we talked about life investments, and really kind of what that means is just like where are we specifically giving our time in the context like of our goals in life. So it could be personal, professional, it's a side hustle. We talked about the podcast. It's like it's really important to look at our actions and kind of look at them very, very honestly, kind of in comparison to results, and not be expecting and making excuses as to why we're not somewhere.
Yeah, no, completely. And then we kind of broke it down into the hows of figuring out where you want to go, what that looks like, as like a big long-term goal. And then number 2, we talked about being brutally honest with yourself. John Taffer and yourself, opening up the books and figuring out what you're doing day to day.
Yeah.
And then finally, we talked about kind of walking the walk and recognizing, okay, if I want to get to there, what does that person do? What does their routine look like?
Yeah.
And not putting those goals, those aspirations, those people on pedestals for what's possible for ourselves.
Yeah. My why today was just around kind of being brutally honest and kind of in a wake-up call. I was relating it to the podcast, but I want to be able to pursue the life I want to live, the goals I have, and in order to do that, I'm going to have to make sacrifices to do that, to walk the walk, like we said.
Yeah, completely. And I think, I was kind of similar in that in 2022. I just wasn't feeling great. And I think, like you mentioned too, the biggest issue for me, and that's why, was being brutally honest and recognizing what gives me life and what doesn't, and wanting to kind of live in that place where I find more fulfillment, as opposed to lying to myself and saying, I want these things, but I'm doing this.
Yeah. Love that, man. I think that wraps another week of
What is Humans. Thanks, guys.